$31 trillion. That's the astronomical amount of U.S. debt, a number so large that it defies human comprehension. How can a nation survive with such an overwhelming debt? Every second, that debt grows, pushing the American economy closer and closer to the abyss. But what would happen if the U.S. never paid that debt? And how could this lead to the collapse of the global economy? The United States relies on money printing to postpone the inevitable. Each new dollar bill printed devalues the currency, increasing inflation, and making life more expensive for everyone. That's an economic ticking time bomb waiting to explode. The impact will not only be local, but global. Investors would lose confidence, markets would collapse, and the world economy would face an unprecedented crisis. Imagine a scenario where the largest U.S. creditors, such as China and Japan, decide to liquidate their investments. Panic would grapple the financial markets. Interest rates would skyrocket. Confidence in the dollar would evaporate, and the U.S. economy, which underpins the global financial system, would collapse. The repercussions would be felt in every corner of the planet, from the collapse of stock markets to the closure of banks and companies. U.S. debt is a constant threat to global stability. And the question remains, are we prepared to face this catastrophe? The shocking truth. Why will the U.S. never pay its debt, and how could it destroy the global economy? 1. The incomprehensible scale of the U.S. debt. Imagine a debt so colossal that it becomes impossible to repay. The United States, with a public debt of more than $31 trillion, has reached a milestone that is difficult to conceive. This figure is higher than the GDP of many developed nations combined. The impact of this on the American economy is huge and growing. Every day, the U.S. sinks deeper into this bottomless pit, and there are no signs that this is going to stop anytime soon. To understand the severity, consider that U.S. debt grows at a rate of billions of dollars a day. Even if the U.S. government were to implement drastic austerity measures now, it would take centuries to repay that debt, and that's without taking into account interest, which continues to increase the amount owed. The reality is that there is no viable plan to solve this problem. Political promises of debt reduction are illusory at best and deliberately misleading at worst. The impacts of such high debt are felt at all levels of the economy. The constant increase in public debt means fewer resources available for investments in infrastructure, education, and health. This, in turn, impedes economic growth and reduces the quality of life for citizens. We are talking about a vicious cycle that, without serious intervention, will continue to worsen. The economic future of the U.S. is at stake, and with it, global economic stability. 2. The money printing policy. A temporary solution, a permanent disaster. Money printing seems like a magic bullet for financial problems, but it comes with a high price. When the U.S. government decides to print more dollars, it is essentially devaluing the currency. This leads to inflation, where the prices of goods and services skyrocket, making life more expensive for everyone. History has shown us time and time again that the unbridled printing of money leads to economic disaster. In recent years, money printing has been used as a tool to stimulate the economy in times of crisis. However, this practice has serious limits and consequences. Rampant inflation can destroy people's purchasing power, creating a situation where wages don't keep up with rising prices. In addition, confidence in the national currency can drop dramatically, leading to capital flight and financial instability. In the long run, printing money does not solve the debt problem. It only postpones the inevitable, while aggravating the economic situation. Rising prices and the devaluation of the dollar negatively affect both U.S. citizens and the global economy. The practice of printing money is a ticking time bomb that, when it explodes, will have devastating consequences for everyone. 3. The external finance trap. Dependency and vulnerability. The United States relies heavily on external financing to sustain its growing debt. Countries like China and Japan are major creditors, financing billions of dollars in U.S. treasuries. This dependency creates significant geopolitical vulnerability. If these countries decide to stop buying U.S. bonds, or worse, start selling them, the consequences would be catastrophic for the U.S. economy. Imagine the impact of a sudden decision by China to liquidate its investments in U.S. bonds. The financial market would collapse. with a precipitous drop in the value of bonds. This would cause an immediate increase in interest rates, making it more expensive for the U.S. government to finance its debt. Global confidence in the U.S. economy would be shaken, leading to an economic crisis that would spread around the world. Geopolitical vulnerability is not limited to the financial market. Dependence on foreign funding also puts the U.S. in a position of weakness in international negotiations. Creditor countries can use this leverage to put pressure on the U.S. on political and economic issues. This situation creates a scenario where American economic sovereignty is compromised, and national security can be threatened by external financial decisions. 4. The impact on the global economy, a cascading collapse. The U.S. economy is the pillar of the global financial system. If the U.S. fails to honor its debts, the repercussions will be felt in every corner of the planet. Imagine a domino effect where a failure in the U.S. triggers crises in economies around the world. Stock markets would plummet, banks would fail, and governments would face severe financial crises. This scenario is not just theoretical. It's a real possibility that should be seriously considered. When confidence in the U.S. dollar wanes, it affects all global markets. Many international transactions are conducted in dollars, and the loss of confidence in the U.S. currency would lead to a global revaluation of assets. Investors would flee to assets considered safer, such as gold, creating extreme volatility in financial markets. The resulting instability can cause recessions in various economies around the world. In addition, U.S. debt directly affects the global banking system. Banks around the world hold U.S. bonds, and a U.S. failure to pay those bonds could lead to a global banking crisis. The interconnectedness of financial markets means that a crisis in one place can quickly spread to others, creating a cascading collapse. The global economy is a delicate balance, and U.S. debt is a constant threat to that stability. 5. The dark future, possible scenarios and necessary preparations. What happens when debt becomes unsustainable? Scenarios include severe austerity, cuts to social programs, and a drastic increase in taxes. Imagine living in a country where the government is forced to cut spending on education, healthcare, and infrastructure to pay off the debt. The quality of life would plummet and inequality would increase. This is not a distant future. It's a reality that may occur sooner than we think. Preparing for that future is crucial. Investing in financial education and diversifying investments are essential steps to protect against economic uncertainty. In addition, pushing for political reforms that address the national debt is critical. We can't avoid the storm, but we can prepare to survive it. Educating yourself about the implications of debt and taking proactive action can make the difference between facing the crisis with resilience or being overwhelmed by it. Finally, it is important to recognize that U.S. debt is not only an economic problem, but also a social problem. Decisions made today will affect future generations. It is essential that policies are geared towards long-term sustainability. Growing debt must be addressed seriously and urgently. The future depends on the actions we take now to ensure economic and social stability. What if U.S. debt was a ticking time bomb waiting to explode? With every second that passes, the risk of a global economic collapse increases. The unbridled printing of money and dependence on foreign creditors are only palliatives to a gigantic problem. What will happen when the world can no longer ignore this looming crisis? World economic stability depends on the ability of the U.S. to manage this colossal debt. But with unsustainable policies and confidence in the dollar at risk, we are heading for an inevitable catastrophe. Banks can fail, markets can collapse, and life as we know it can change dramatically. Are we really prepared to deal with the consequences of a global financial collapse? The future of the world economy hangs by a thread. What if the U.S. debt crisis is the catalyst for a global disaster? What will be the first signs of collapse, and how will the world react? It's time to prepare for the unexpected and ask, what can be done now to avert this catastrophe? Stay tuned and keep following along as we uncover more secrets about the global economy and the forces that could change our future forever.